And we're live. So welcome to the second edition of the Community Currencies Now. This is actually the second time I've given this intro because we had a little technical snafu. And let me get the video link to everyone here. We're excited to talk to you today about bringing power to the people, specifically economic power, creating your own money so that you can, enrich your own community. And we have some really cool people with us on the call today. We'll just go around the horn and get this party started. So I'm Griff Green. I work with the Common Stack, and our goal is to create currencies around funding public goods. And I'll pass it to Will.
I'm Will Reddick in Kenya with Grassroots Economics, and we've been working on community currencies for almost 10 years here. I'll pass it to Julio.
Hello, I'm Julio Linares. I'm from Guatemala, right now based in Berlin, working on a community currency project called Circles UBI, trying to bring about a basic income from the bottom up. I'll pass it to Martin.
So hello everyone, I'm Martin, I'm from France, and I'm going to talk about a cryptocurrency project based on a universal dividend, which is a cryptocurrency that has a very strong mathematical background in terms of economics. And this money has been launched 3 years ago in France, and now we have a community of around 2,600 people starting exchanging this currency. I pass it to Alain.
Yeah, Alain Brenzikofer, based in Zurich. I'm the founder of nCointer, which is a cryptocurrency for a universal basic income in local community currencies. So the idea is that all the communities can just start their own money. And besides that, as a day job, I develop privacy solutions for blockchain, which are part of nCointer, will be part of nCointer.
I just love Groundhog's Day. I said this last time, but I really appreciate organizations that will focus on finding economic stability so they can continue their process. So nice work with finding a business case. So it's hard to actually come together and talk about anything without at least mentioning the crisis that's going on in the world right now. The whole world seems to be protesting, and funny enough, it actually started through someone else printing their own money. The George Floyd was originally, the police wanted to speak to him about, because they accused him of using a counterfeit $20 bill to purchase some items. And it's really interesting that this whole thing started off with someone taking the power of printing money into their own hands. So I would just like to kick it off. Does anyone have anything to say about this crisis that's going on out there?
Sure. I think it's just super important that we get to a lot of these kind of root causes that exacerbate, inequality and racism, and the idea that money has been used as a tool of systematic oppression, for a long, long time is something that people should really kind of understand. And I mean, even here in Kenya, there was a hut tax, right? So the British came in and charged people to own a house, and if you didn't get the money, which only came from them, they would basically conscript you, into labor for them. And so I mean, that has been the methodology in a way of imperialism and oppression for countless years here. And we're sitting on top of a history of inequality built on a mountain of economic trauma, really caused by all this stuff. So I think it's, getting to the heart of it and getting to the point of saying, can communities, can individuals, is money creation some kind of right, a human right, that anybody can have? And if so, what are the obligations and responsibilities around that right? And I think that's a really productive conversation to have. And if we can help a poor community in informal settlement in Nairobi, can we also help a community in Chicago be empowered to create their own financial system and can aid come in and support that. And I think it's a nice way to take a lot of the anger right now into a productive realm. I think.
Anyone else?
Yeah, maybe. No, I totally agree with. I think we all feel now, and even more with the event that are going on now, that we all have in our hands technology that can bring new possibilities and a system where everyone creates money. So even the oppressed people in the past can have access as everyone else to money creation, and the money creation won't be in the hand of a minority that carries on the trauma of the past, I would say. And like personally, I was 2 days ago at a march in my town in France, in solidarity for George Floyd and also for cases of police brutality in France. But the situation between France and the US is different, because the question of racism is not that a problem in France. We live better together, I would say. But I was really so there were a lot of people from minorities in France that were talking about oppression and how to change it, and I was really amazed on how often in the speech of the young people I heard that they were referring all the time about the economical order that has to be changed, otherwise nothing can change. That's it.
Yeah, well, I would just add that more equality would probably mean less violence and less tensions in the society. And if we can contribute something with a different design of money, then let's do it. I wouldn't expect too much from it in the sense of peace to the world, but at least it's kind of a push in the direction of less inequality, of less social tensions.
Do you guys think UBI has any would support changing things? Maybe Julio, you have anything?
Yeah, I totally believe so. I think universal basic income is the beginning of a civilizatory transition to other systems that are possible. Having a basic ground that everybody can stand on creates the basis for people to have access to other resources, to train themselves if they need, to have education, have access to healthcare, and build any form of social organization that they deem possible. I believe that to do that, it's impossible. It's important that we take control over the money system, meaning that we democratize it together.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like people, this is a spark that lit the fire, but people after months of quarantine have just felt disempowered. They felt disempowered and out of control. And in this call, at least, I hope that we can try to help empower people and give them the tools to bring their own economic reality into their own hands and not be, at the behest of people so far removed from their own community. And with that, I think we should just get right into it. Martino, I am really excited to hear about, you said you're going to talk about the relative theory of money, but I hope you leave time to talk about the Dunter blockchain, one of the older crypto UBI projects that has probably experienced a lot of lessons, as it seems to be one of the ones that's taken off more than anybody else. So yeah, tell us what you got.
Can I share the screen though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Up. Is it working?
Yeah.
Okay. Up. I'm trying to be fast. So I'm gonna talk about the Libra money and the June. So the G1 cryptocurrency. So this, to understand a little bit, we have to deep further into the mathematical concept, because everything on this project is based on a mathematical theory that has been written 10 years ago by a French mathematician, and basically is just redefining economy as for human beings. So I apologize, it's in French, but it is more animation than everything. So we have to. Does it work? Yeah. Is it working or?
Yep, it's working great.
Okay, great. So the major flaw of all the monetary system is the fact that they don't take into account that humanity is a flow and there is new generation coming in the future. So we have to create a system where there won't be inequality in space for people. So we all have to create the same amount of money, but also we have to have a system that has equality in time as well. So the money has to not privilege people in time or in space. So to do that, so this guy named Stéphane Laborde made a theory. So it's based on mathematical equation, and I'm just gonna show deep quickly. Sorry. So the mathematical equation have like a human parameter to take into account the human flow, and this human parameter is the life is the life expectancy. So espérance de vie in French is life expectancy. So there are equation. You can have more information on websites about the equation. You can also read the theory. It's in English and it's free. It's free to access on internet. So basically so they are here, sorry. So those are the mathematical equation, and as a result of this mathematical equation, you have the universal dividend. So I'm not gonna explain in detail the equation, but we are going to see how it works on an animation. So let's imagine that we have a money mass that a community has to use. So this money mass will grow with time to allow the new generation to come into the system and also to have a fair system in time. So let's imagine that it's a circle, and we are going to make it grow. So there is 4 person in this that has this amount of money. The size of the circle is the amount of money, and there is 4 other people that has the black part. So you can express the money rather in quantitative value, so the size of the money, a certain amount, or also in relative value. And when you do that, you have a different expression of money. And we are going to make a jump of 12 years. So 12 ans, it's 12 years. And according to the equation, it's an increase of 250% of the money. And when you do that, everyone creates money. And the one part is called the DU, the UD, the universal dividend. Sorry, I'm just not used to those things. And so everyone creates a part. So there are 8, everyone creates a part. So this is the new situation. But now relatively, the percentage per person start to change. And so let's imagine here that one person is just died, and there is a new person coming in, Anna. So now there are still 8, and we make a jump in time. So I'm only talking here about money creation. I'm not talking about money circulation. So everyone creates a part, a UD, a universal dividend, and everyone creates a part. So this is the new situation. Everyone has created money quantitatively. So this is the 3 situation we saw. And when you see it relatively, so this is quantitatively, so this is the size of the circle at the different step, But the interesting part is not quantitatively, it's relatively, because it doesn't matter how much money you have. It's not enough as an information. It's important to know how much money do you have compared to the other. So compared to the average, to the global money mass. And when you express your money and your share in your account, when you express it relatively, to the average money mass, you have a much more accurate view of where you are positioned in the system. Are you at the average? Are you at the top? Are you under the top? So when you sit relatively for a Libre money, you see that everyone is converging to the average money mass, and the average money mass. So here we had the example in percentage of the money mass, but it's exactly the same to call it as a number of UD. So it's the same thing. So in this system, it works like this. So now I'm gonna jump to the so this was the theory. So how it works, Libre money in the mathematical concept. And now, so 3 years ago, in March 2017, the first Libre money, according to this theory, has been launched in France as a cryptocurrency. So the currency is called G1. So, and now there is one key thing to when you want to make this this ID real, we have to make sure that there will be only one account creating money per person. So one account per person that creates a universal dividend every day. So to make sure that they won't be double accounts and fake accounts, we have a system called toile de confiance in French, web of trust, where to enter in the system, you have to be certified in an application, in a system. You have to be certified by 5 people. So it creates a network where you will create a universal dividend only if you are previously certified by 5 existing members of this community. And that's how we make sure that there is only one account per person. So how it works, the Unitaire, so we have nodes. So the power of the nodes in terms of calculation power can differ. And this is the web of trust also in Unitaire allows to have a very light blockchain and a very light system in terms of electrical consumption, because it doesn't matter how much your machine is powerful, you will not create more money. You will create money only because you are alive and you are in the system. But it's not the fact that you have a powerful machine that will make you calculate more coins, more we call it G1s, the coins. So everyone in those nodes. So it's not necessary that all the people have a node. For example, now we are 2,600 and we have only 50 nodes that are calculating the blockchain. It's not enough. It's largely enough for running the system, and we don't need a dramatic amount of nodes, and it's enough to deal with the transaction. So I guess you know a little bit about the blockchain. So in the blockchain there is blocks. So in the blocks you have transaction. So you have transaction, certification. So sorry, I'm going to make an example. For example, there will be a new block that will be calculated. So thanks to this equation, this equation is entered into the algorithm of Unitaire, and the universal dividend, thanks to that, is automatically generated in every day to the account of every member certified. So the money is created like that, like technically it's automatically generated thanks to this equation. So creation, UD creation, sorry for the French different things. So like, for example, there is a transaction. So there is like a bunch of vegetables that has been exchanged. So this is in the block. And for example, there is a new certification from one guy to the girl. Then the block is linked into the blockchain, and the blockchain is replicated to all the person. And when there is one member like creating like forging a new block, this member won't be able to forge the next one. And thanks to that, we make sure that the system is changing, and the decisions keeps to be decentralized. So let's take another example. So the next time it's going to be this guy. So there is a newcomer here, and she's, for example, to know the community of users, she start to sell a bike to this guy that has that has UD before, that has money. So the transaction is registered in the blockchain, but this person was not a member. It's not necessary to be a member to start to produce things and to get money, but you have to be member when you want to create the UD every day. So for example, this girl just met, thanks to this transaction, this community, and now they are okay. They met in the real life, and and they are okay to certify her. So the certification goes into the block. Sorry, it was the UD creation. So now she creates a UD, and the blocks is linked in the blockchain, and the blockchain is replicated. So we have a turning decision, and this guy have a stop that will not allow him to create the next block. And then if you want to have your own node, it's your own decision. So you know how a blockchain works. If you want to be part of the decentralized system, it's just on you. So this girl, like in the bottom, creates this money. So now how we use it. So this is the core of the system is called Unitaire. So this is the blockchain. And then we have different clients, I would say, so that can communicate with the blockchain. So it's not really important. It's the different combination that we have. So we have application, we have web things, or we can deep dive a little on how it works. But we can also we started to develop as well bills that can be used. So it's not necessarily that it's not a completely digitalized technology. We can create bills that can allow people that have low access to technology to access to this. So now we're gonna go at the web. So okay, it's only Julio that, yeah. Okay.
Are you trying to unshare?
No.
Oh,
No,
okay.
it's we just received a message from Julio. He has a breakdown. So is it okay? Is it working? Yeah. So now we're gonna I'm showing Cesium now. So this is the different so when you are on Cesium, this is the name of the application, and you can also have it on your smartphone. You have all the feature of the money so you have the money share, you have the monetary mass in universal dividend, and you have the number of member. So you have the evolutions, like like it evolved like this in 3 years, like on the right. So we started, we were 50, and now we are 2,600. So I can show you my wallet, for example, my transactions. Yeah, sorry, my internet is a bit slow.
It's okay. You actually did stop sharing though. So if you want us to share, if you want to share your screen.
I stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry. So I'm gonna. Does it work?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna start again a little bit because I thought I was sharing this. So on Cesium, which is the web application and the smartphone application, you have the feature of the money. So on the right, the graph here is the amount of members. So that change in time. We started at 50%, and now we are to more than 2,000, and the evolution of the monetary mass. yeah, you can ask questions later. I'm going to show you, for example, my transactions. So recently so every day you see I create a universal dividend. And recently I just bought a very nice coat hanger. And I just went like 500 meters from my flat in Toulouse, and I just bought it, and to a guy that was selling it in June. And I bought a lot of things. Like I can show, if I show all, I guess. So this is all the money I received or I paid. So I bought shirts. So it's mostly a second-hand economy. So we buy and sell second-hand stuffs, but there is a lot of food that you can buy, like toys. I bought toys, a lot of like drinks, a nice equipment to drill things. I don't know how it's called in English. And people usually they give me money because I do conference around this topic. So when I do conference, I have like they pay me in June. Yeah, I bought a cactus cake. So I bought a lot of things. It's all the things I bought. In blue, it's what I received, and the rest is all I've bought. And so I can show you our marketplace. So we have like a online marketplace where we have offer and demand. It's called j'échange. I change. So there is a lot of things to sell and buy, but most of the things we sell and buy are inside markets that are held in France, where we decide to gather the producer and the offer and the demand, I would say, and people start to share things and talk, and this is a really important thing that, and I will finish with that, is the thing that if you want to create a community, you have to start somewhere in a community. You cannot ask for community money if you don't have an idea of where you want to implement it. So it's very important because, for example, in our system, the Web of Trust for a lot of people is the rules to enter inside the Web of Trust are too strict for the people. But it's because it's strict that people are gathering into bars to know each other and allow the certification. And when they do that, they meet and they start to know each other, and they start to say, "Yo, I can sell you that, I can produce that." And if you don't have some constraints, your system might work, but it won't. It will stay at the stage of an idea and not something that is concrete.
Yeah, we actually in the last call we had a presentation about how important it is to have a cyclical movement and really have money flowing back and back and forth between people and around. Otherwise, the currency doesn't have a lot of value. So if you guys want to learn more about the importance of having people that are accepting money and giving money for currencies for these things to survive, definitely check out our first call. But I want to open it up to questions. Does anyone have any good questions here?
Yeah, I have a question regarding about what do you do with businesses that you would like to onboard? Is it always from the individual perspective, or can businesses join somehow? And also, how do you organize around that? You mentioned a bit about it, but just to know a bit more.
About the business, you mean? So now we have that there is some small businesses that joined the system. So there is in my town in Toulouse, in southwest of France, we have a musical instrument store that sells instruments in euro, and you can go in this shop and buy and have a mixed price. So I have a discount in euro, and you can pay half of the price in euro, and the rest of the price of the price that is set by the seller in G1 in June. So it works like this, and legally, it's so the French state has legal have like set a law saying that all the crypto values are just assets. So it's just like an object. So you can, like in legal term, you just have to declare that you have a certain amount of assets, but unless you have an exchange between those assets and euros, you won't be taxed. And this is a key fact is that in our system we don't use euro. We don't use operation where we exchange euro against junes, or we do it very rarely. So it's not very important. And it is a huge difference with the Bitcoin, for example, because because of the monetary policy of the Bitcoin, it's a speculative money. So you will have a lot of operation where you will exchange Bitcoin against dollar or euro. In our G1, we don't have. So it's a completely independent economy that is gathering, that is growing. So it's growing slowly, but it's still growing. And the slow pace allows to make social interaction. If you expect a very huge rate of expansion with at the same time a good amount of a decent amount of social interaction, it's not possible.
Yeah, 100%. The culture of these currencies is really important to get right. And actually, Allah also has a UBI cryptocurrency that he has to present, and I'm really excited to hear it, more about Incointer, and especially, you know, if you have a chance to dive into the fact that these currencies aren't backed by a national currency, and kind of explain how it could ever have value. But of course,
Yeah.
please tell us about Incointer.
All right. I think I can share the screen now.
It's not shared yet.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm on the way.
In the meantime, we have a question from the audience. For Martino, just about the community currency. How you said that it's growing. How is it growing? And also about if you could explain more about the web of trust. But maybe now that we have the screen, we can wait for the question.
Yeah, we'll keep that one in mind, and we'll add it to the end if we have time.
Yeah.
All right. So let me see if I can full screen this. Doesn't want to work. Okay, well, anyway, so compared to what we just heard, Incointer is a very young project. We just launched our first testnet. I think we have similar motivations, but quite different approaches. And so let me go first to the motivation. Why do we want to do that? We have, well, 1.7 billion adults that are unbanked in the world, and we have more than 1 billion people without IDs, without state-issued IDs. So that's kind of a real obstacle for financial inclusion to a variety of services. And we also, since Thomas Piketty's analysis in the Capital for the 21st century, his law of R greater G, saying that the return on capital will always, or has historically always been, bigger than the economical growth, is actually a very good explanation why the system that we have now is diverging. It is not a stable system. It is diverging, and inequality is always rising unless we have events like the Second World War or something like that. So that's more or less where we are at. And so what do we want to do instead? we would like to have a sustainable, inclusive economy. We would like to have equal opportunity, freedom of choice, in the sense, freedom of choice on how I live, what I spend my time with, who I spend my time with, especially without like economical forces forcing me into some abusive relationship or something like that, be it private or at work. We would like to decentralize money so that every community can create their own money, and not on a global level, but really on a community level. And no one should have the power to shut something like that down or to just prevent it. And on the governance side, we think that each community should decide for themselves how their money works. Now, this can be a challenge because you have to define very critical parameters of your economy on a democratic basis, which for sure is a challenge. But let's assume that's just the way we approach it, and we will get to the parameters that you need to decide on. So our approach here is to give a universal basic income to all humans, and this universal basic income comes as fresh money issuance. So it's very similar to the dividend in the sense that individuals are actually issuing new money. So we want to realize that on a non-permissioned blockchain, and we don't want to rely on state-issued IDs like the project we heard about before. So the big challenge here is how can we make sure that only humans get the universal basic income, and that they only get it once. So kind of how can we mitigate the cyber attack? And then the question that I'd like to discuss today also is how does it get real value? But let's first explain how we solve the cyber attack. So we leverage the fact that a person can only be in one place at one time. So we have a very elaborate protocol that lets people meet every 41 days with a random group of people within their community. So it is very involved. So you really have to do something on a regular basis. But it is a pretty strong guarantee. So as long as 50% of all of the participants are honest, this protocol will work, because a human can always tell another human, and so you just attest each other's like you know it from PGP key signing parties. And the way this works is you want to create a new community currency. So you define in your city, you define a few public places where people can meet. It needs to be publicly accessible places. And then you define a trusted setup of people who perform the first meetup. And every meetup has something between 3 and 12 people meeting at a random location out of the set that you defined. Our proof of concept uses this Android app where Bluetooth is used to discover the other participants, and then you just attest each other's keys manually, or with kind of manual confirmation. All right, and what this gives us is actually also not only a proof of personhood, it also gives us a proof of location. And that's why I think Encounter will be the first cryptocurrency which is actually able to have local currencies, in the sense of locally bound issuance of money. Of course, you can spend the money globally, but the issuance is bound geographically. And still, we have one global blockchain, and we plan to be a Polkadot parachain. So we are building on substrate technology, and be joining the global security of Polkadot, but kind of the economic boundary is local for each individual currency. And this also means we don't use proof of work, we don't waste energy for consensus. Now money issuance, and that's actually well, that's a difference to d'unitaire that we heard before. What we do is also we issue every individual issues money every 41 days by joining these meetup ceremonies. But our money supply is not constantly growing. So that there's many ways to look at it. In relative terms, I think it's actually quite equivalent to what we heard before, because also here this tends to favor more equality, because what we use is demurrage. So we have perishable money which loses face value over time. So our local currencies in the past used that already. In Wörgl or Chiemgauer, they have something like 2% loss per 3 months or something like that. We are a bit more aggressive in that sense, that we say we have a demurrage of 7% per month. And the idea of this is, whatever we set the demurrage to, if we have a stationary economy with that demurrage, that will mean that the money supply will actually be limited to a certain amount in respect to the size of the population. And this also means that the ratio of the UBI towards the total issuance will stay constant. So in the end, I think the difference to the last project is not significant. It's the same kind of outcome. But this demurrage is one of the parameters that each community can choose for themselves. And I think what is obvious here is this is not a speculative currency. So don't expect to get rich by being an early adopter. It's not going to happen. So now, how does this get real value? There's in history, there have been local currencies which always, or I mean, the ones that I know about, they pegged their value to a national currency, and they were also backed by national currency. That means one example in Wörgl was the AB-Schein. You got paid for work in this local currency, but there was capital which was kind of frozen for the money that was paid out. But then, because of demurrage, the money velocity was increased, and that means that during a time of depression, the issuance of local money could really make the economy flourish again. But we should just be aware that there was national currency backing it. Now, what we are actually aiming at is not backing it to the national currency, because let's take Venezuela or Argentina, depending at what year you're looking at it. If you have either deflation or inflation, you don't want to. National currencies are not actually the best reference you could get. So we think about a social contract where you say each community can define what their UBI should be able to pay for. So you could, for example, say 1 unit per day shall cover like, yeah, a bit of rice, a bit of flour, maybe bread, maybe whatever. But you cannot just invent this. People have to believe in it. Money, the real value of money is just what people believe they can get for it. So that's I think that's the important thing. And how can we get to the point that people believe that they will get something for it? And that's what we discussed before. You need a circular economy. You need a few people who commit to accept the currency for certain goods, and then the whole thing starts working. But I'd be happy to discuss this question further, because I think that's crucial to the success. I don't want to go too much into the infrastructure part, but just I want to also highlight the privacy features, because if you go to these key signing parties, you never have to identify yourself, so you can use a fresh pseudonym every time you go, and then you just over time increase your trust level. So the more ceremonies you have attended over time, the more the trust in your unique identity. Because if you only attend every second ceremony, you could actually maintain two identities by just interleaving them. That wouldn't give you more UBI, but it would give you two digital identities, which for other purposes might be an advantage. And then we use trusted execution environments, which is a technology that allows us to have a decentralized system where the validators of the system are not seeing the data they are processing. So it's a feature of Intel SGX that we are using, where we put some trust in Intel. Yes, we do, of course, which is kind of a compromise to get a reasonable maturity level of technology for privacy. All right, scalability, that's also something. Substrate, our privacy solution, features sharding. That means that every local currency can actually exist in its own shard, which helps scalability, obviously. We have one testnet out now, which is testnet Gazelle. The next one will come in the next few weeks, and we hope to launch a pilot somewhere in a developing country, preferably by the end of the year, in together with an NGO. So. And just a little impression from testnet Gazelle, there is an explorer where you can just see where in the world we have local currencies. Right now, we only have bot communities. We don't have real communities yet interacting with the chain. But yeah, I think I'd like to open for questions.
Thank you. Yeah, I really loved your emphasis on the social contract and making sure that there's some guidance for the communities that within your system that are starting these things up. I think it's a really smart play. Does anyone have any questions for Allah? Yeah, Martino.
Yeah, I just read the white paper yesterday, and it's really
Great.
interesting. I was really amazed by the rigorous aspect of the randomization process, and for me it's really interesting. But on the monetary process, on the monetary code, or the monetary rules that you set, when you say that it won't be a speculative money, that's right. I think you won't have person exchanging those coins with dollar and making it to make it more profit. But the thing is, as I think I understood, is your amount of money is still reach a maximum at a time. And even if you have demurrage, that you have a little percentage of demurrage, you have just as on the graph, it's really visible. It's a very like an insignificant decrease. And the thing is, if on this system, I think that if you are a newcomer at day 410, for example, you will have relatively in time, you will have much more power than people that will enter in the system at the day 500. So it's I have doubt about the fact that the future generation will be happy with the system, because the newcomer has all the power into their hands. So for me, you have a system of demurrage that does not allow speculation like on Bitcoin. It means speculation to try to get profit in another currency, which is dollar or euro. But for me, you have a problem of relativity in time.
Do you think if you are earlier, you have an advantage? Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying?
Yes.
But that is only true for a very short amount of time, because let's say you start at ceremony 10, at day 410. That means other people might have accumulated some money. That's true. But because all the money loses its value constantly, so it's halving its value within 1 year, you actually equalize that over time.
Yeah,
and by choosing the demurrage rate, you can choose how much weight you want to give to the UBI with respect to capital.
Yeah.
And I think that is important, because I don't think, like, kind of there is a certain optimal, I believe there is an optimal rate of inequality, which is lower than it is today, up to me, but it will not be a one-to-one. So you need kind of the possibility to raise some capital for certain occasions or for certain accomplishments. And I think you have a parameter with demurrage and the size. You can also change the rate of UBI over time, if you want, if a community wants. I think you have the right tools to adjust the system to what the society agrees to.
So I have just one last question.
Sure.
Do you think in your system, when you want to start an experiment in a specific community, you will identify all the member of the community and starting directly with all the member?
No, that's
or you
not
think
possible.
So you think that your system has to allow in time newcomers?
Yes,
And that
it's actually,
if in this system, what I fear maybe it's that the newcomer, that they will be, for example, 10 in the community at first for the 3 first years, for example, and they will gather according to your graph, they will collect a very huge amount of coins. And in the future, when there will be like 1,000 newcomer at day 500, the inequality between the newcomer that gather a huge amount of money at first and the elder comer, it's still very, it's a huge time inequality. But I understand that this system has
well, in the interest of time, I want to make sure Allah has a chance to respond, and then we got to move to Will.
Okay, just I think there is a misunderstanding, because the level of kind of the stable money supply is proportional to the size of the population which is there. So if there is, for 100 ceremonies, only 3 people, and then 1,000 join, then the money supply will explode, well, no, it will not explode. It will adjust to the size of the population, and that means that the capital that the early adopters were raising will pretty soon be kind of equalized by demurrage. But just to make sure, it needs, Encounter needs a trusted setup. So the biggest kernel of people who start is 12 people, and then because we need trust in this to spread the trust of this setup, we can only have 1/4 growth per ceremony. So it's kind of exponential growth, but with kind of, you cannot just have 1,000 people join in.
It's really hard to talk about these systems because they're so complex and there's so many little pieces and parts. It's honestly, this is one of the things with the Common Stack we're really into, is designing these systems and simulating them in CAD. This open source simulation software that's really tuned for simulating economic systems. And I'd love to see, like, Martino's system, when you're picking 5 different, you have a requirement of 5 people and choosing that parameter versus 6 or 8 and how it would affect the dynamics of the system, or a lane with the demurrage and picking 7% and having the ability to simulate these systems and tune them in ways that you can understand how they would evolve over time with different initializing conditions. I know that I bring this up because I know Will has been experimenting with CAD in his work with grassroots economics, which I have to say is probably my favorite crypto project that is out there. It's grassroots economics is actually on the cutting edge of token engineering research and applying it directly to people on the ground, with over 10,000 users, I believe, in Kenya, using their currency every day. Well, at least 10,000 active users. Maybe you can go into the stats on this a little better than I can, but you're doing incredible work down there. Do you want to tell us more about grassroots economics, Will? Oh, you're muted. Yeah, unmute.
There you go. Hi guys, I can share screen as well.
Oh yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Allah, you might have to unshare your screen.
Oh,
sorry about that. I just changed the settings, but it wasn't fast enough.
Again. So yeah, I kind of, I feel like listening to this, it reminds me that just kind of, it's like we've been on a 10-year hackathon of just trying like different concepts and technologies. And from our perspective, like from what I've done and working with here in Kenya, it's like, how do we enable, a woman selling a 5-cent tomato to access a market and trade with someone selling, a 20-cent on the dollar jerry can of water when neither of them have any money. And so just like coming up with like, a cultural build and technology and everything around that problem has been really a nice way to focus in a way of saying, okay, here's the context, here's the realm of technology that is available to us right now. And so when we first started this, it was, pieces of paper. And eventually we moved on to, a MySQL kind of database system with USSD, and we tried working with Bitcoin for a little while. And just in this last year, we kind of discovered this bonding curve technology, that started with the Bancor protocol, and I it's iteration after iteration, and I think we've got something that's basically working right now. We've got 23,000 users in the last 2 months, we've traded $400,000. We have about 800 a day users or so, and about 10,000 a month or so out of the total usership. And I can maybe show you some graphs around that. And I would like to, I think it'd be nice to show the CAD schematic that we've been working on with Block Science.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, and you're not sharing screen yet.
Okay, let me do that then. Okay. But I just, maybe I do really want to like appreciate the discussion and like and I really do like these concepts around UBI and I really also want to separate layers out in terms of a token kind of creation layer. There's a blockchain layer, there's a token creation layer, which is, with us, it's around these smart contracts and bonding curves. And then there's a cultural build or cultural layer. And how these currencies are issued right now and how they're used in a village or how they're being used by Red Cross, for instance, are very different. And I really like separating those out because I feel if we over constrain the cultural build into the technology, then we tend to be building something just for Europeans or just for guys with PGP keys. I know a few of them, and anyways, it's really fun to think about, like what are some of these structures that we can build that that people can use in a lot of different ways. And so I'll kind of describe what we've done kind of so far on the sort of like token engineering side of it, and then a little bit on the cultural side of it. So first off, we kind of start with this red box here, this red box, and this is basically the box of the issuer. And the issuer in our context could be a group of women, like 25 women. They all run businesses. They have, let's say, goats and tires and whatever else Jeff Emmett wanted to write here. But they've got a bunch of stuff, in other words, and they've got businesses and they do haircuts and that sort of thing. And they basically commit, they say, we are going to create, let's say, 400,000 tokens that are backed by our own goods and services, okay? And the way they can issue that to each other can be divided up. It can be based on their individual commitments. Those commitments go to like elders and chiefs so that they can make sure that they're being honored. And so this is their backing here, their social backing, their primary market, if you will. These are the tokens that they are creating, right? And then they're dispersing those tokens, right, amongst themselves and into users, into other chamas. This is basically the economy here, and we'll get into sort of the fiat aspect of it as well. And then we have potential for donors here as well to be involved, right? So they could potentially be adding here, but we'll kind of get down the road where we kind of want them to be adding is actually in this other state. So now we say, okay, great, you created your 400,000 tokens and you claimed 400,000 shillings of backing behind it in goods and services. Let's say that is a goat every 3 months for the next 4 years, right? As a baby goat is born, someone can come and claim that goat if they've got those tokens, okay? So it's basically, Sardex in a way, I think is very similar to this, where you go into a bunch of businesses and they have a legal contract and they say, hey, we're gonna give you a credit based on your commitment, right? And so they end up with 10,000 euros of credit in this system because they are accepting it and they have a legal contract where they have to re-accept that credit. Okay, so that's kind of, the basic layer we're dealing with, of just saying, okay, we want to give a community that doesn't have money or has very little money the ability to create a credit. And we want to make sure that they're going to honor that credit. They're not going to game each other. And so this is very much kind of, it's mutual credit-esque in a way, even though it's not exactly. And then we're going to say, well, that's not enough, because what if all the goats die, or what if these ladies take off or just decide not to accept it anymore, right? How do we create some sort of guarantee there? And not only can we create a guarantee, how can we connect this currency to another currency, right? How can the next village trade with this village? How can they trust that relative value between them? And thirdly, how can the rest of the economy take part, right? How can we not do this in a vacuum? And so, and I think all of those are really important things. Like no one is trying to create or wanting, there's no motivation to create an isolated community in a village in Kenya, right? They want to eat food, right? Like they want to send their kids to school. Like there's no, and so, you know, really trying to not isolate and choose, is there a membrane? Like, can we create a structure that connects this currency in pink into, for now, the national currency? And we do that through the concept of a reserve. That reserve could be any token. We are using XDAI right now, which is basically DAI pulled onto a sidechain. We're totally blockchain agnostic. We've moved blockchains once already. We could technically move to another blockchain in about 8 hours. So the idea right now is to basically say that if we are using national currency as a reserve, well, okay, how does that work? And so this gets into this bonding curve thing. So in green here, you basically have the idea that, so not only is there this local backing, but in blue here, there is a reserve. So if they're going to create 400,000 tokens, we are going to, right now, we have just a regulatory requirement that we've self-imposed of 25%. And that's a target reserve ratio. And so imagine like this blue box is like a seed bank. Okay, so you've got a big house here that you're you know, a structure that you're putting your seeds into. And basically, when that seed bank is full, the size of it is 25% of the supply of all the tokens that were created by these women. Okay, so these women created 400,000 tokens, and we're going to say a full seed bank is 100,000, say, shillings of collateral behind that, and we're using XDAI as that collateral. Okay, so we've got 100,000 shillings there as collateral in this seed bank, if you will. That's on chain, on the blockchain. And it's basically bonded to this supply. So the supply, in other words, no longer belongs to the women. You know, they've created those tokens, but they've given that supply over to a contract, which we would call this green thing in the contracts we've been using, called a converter contract. And the only thing that can mint new tokens or destroy them is this contract. And the contract has an equation for basically the size of this pool compared to the amount of tokens being issued, and vice versa. So you can do two things in this contract. You can send it tokens, the community token. So CIC stands for Community Inclusion Currency here. Because we were dealing with refugees, we really wanted to emphasize the inclusion aspect of it. And so that's how that got termed together with Red Cross. And so you can send your tokens to it. It will burn them. It will liquidate them, if you will, and it will pull out some reserve. Okay. And vice versa, you can add reserve to it and it will create additional tokens. Okay. So it's a basic, you know, a bonding curve contract here. It's very simple. It's essentially just one equation, which, you know, you can read our white paper or read one of the original Bancor white paper for the equation being used there. It's not very complicated, but you can adjust. There's a few parameters to adjust how volatile that is, and that's basically based on this target reserve ratio. So again, if you start with a supply here in our example of 400,000 tokens, you've got 100,000 tokens behind it in reserve. You have 400,000 shillings of real life collateral. You hope that, I mean, that's the primary market behind it, right? So you've got your social, and so this reserve down here. So if I at the get-go, so we've launched this currency, and we've said, okay, the value of this currency is always 1-to-1 to goats. Okay, that's the social contract, right? Because they're going to spend this at the value of a shilling into the community for labor, for instance, right? So they're going to guarantee to accept it back for goats. Okay, so there's this social contract that it is 1-to-1 with the issuer's backing. Okay, and then we say, okay, also, if you're holding this currency, anyone holding this currency also holds a claim against this reserve on chain. Okay, so at the moment of creation here, we say, well, if you take one of these tokens and you liquidate it, you're basically going to get one reserve back out. But as we start emptying that collateral pool, you get diminishing returns along the way. Okay, and vice versa, as that reserve is empty, you also encourage people to fill it back up. Okay, so the bonding curve basically does two things. You say, as my seed bank is very empty, if you add a shilling to that seed bank, we're going to create more tokens. As it gets full and full and full, well, you get to the point where you're only getting 1 token out for every 1 shilling in. And as it gets beyond that, you get, again, more diminishing returns, as if you're putting your seeds in the garage and rats are eating it, kind of thing. Right? We're working on this seed bank kind of analogies, and that's kind of how we describe it in the community, is that you've got this social guarantee, here it is, and you have this kind of share value. In a way, these tokens are also shares, if you will, of this seed bank that's in here. And so far so good. We've been working on that sort of explanation, and last year we had 11 currencies that were all being traded amongst each other without XDAI. We had just a virtual token that we basically created with the community. So the community said, we weren't exchanging for XDAI at all back then. There was no connection at all to national currency. We said, let's just create a common reserve amongst these 11 currencies. And each currency, so imagine this entire diagram duplicated in several villages, 11 different villages. They're trading amongst each other, and the trade deficit amongst each other. Let's say I have a Griff token and a Will token in 2 communities. So if I send it to Griff, my Will token, he's going to liquidate the reserve behind it. He's going to take that reserve and add it to his Griff token contract, and he's going to create some Griff tokens as a result. And as a result, the trade imbalance between these 2 communities becomes off, and it's basically mapped onto that exchange value in this. So Griff actually has an advantage now to buy back from my community. And so that was working quite well in these communities in terms of creating reciprocity, right? So you have one community, it's circulating great, it's circulating through here. As people exchange it out to other communities, it's the equivalent of cashing out the reserve. So you have a nice kind of a way of mapping trade deficit onto exchange price here that I thought was very nice. And in the same way, if you're actually pulling out the reserve and then going to use the reserve. So in this case, instead of buying from Griff, I actually just want the reserve itself. And I'm going to go ahead and spend that in Nairobi, right? I'm going to pull out the XDAI, and let's say I sell the XDAI on local cryptos, and I go and buy, whatever, gasoline with it or something like that, right? You're doing the same thing. You're basically devaluing the exchange rate here, but there's still this local rate. And this, like Alan was saying, the core of all of these kind of concepts is, what is the real guarantee behind these? I mean, this is the green box is a collateral, if you will, but it's a collateral for what? It's a collateral against this box, the goats, essentially not being there, or so as long as there is a goat being sold in that market, if the collateral drops out, let's say it's all sold out, it makes sense at some point economically, there's a utility to adding some reserve into that seed bank, because you want to buy a goat, right? And you're getting a good return on buying that goat. So we actually think of arbitrage as a stabilizing effect in this system. And that was, this was this version of this was kind of the brainchild of Eyal Herzog with the original Bancor protocol. And I think it's a very simple, elegant, brilliant solution for this type of thing. And taking it out of the context of saying, we don't really care what that reserve token is, so like in the BNT case, there's a business model around people buying the BNT token as the reserve currency, right? Versus, can we come up with better versions of this? Like, could the reserve currency be tied into a basket of goods and services? Could it be tied into a currency that's like a basic income that is doing inflation? And all of these, the issuance model here again could be anything, right? Like, there could be, the way we do disbursements with Red Cross is that Red Cross is here, and let's say, so Red Cross has its own version of this, right? In the Red Cross version, they've got, instead of goats, they actually have some fiat, which is donor funds, that is sitting here in this account right here. And they are distributing this in a way as kind of a basic income, as a cash transfer program to help vulnerable communities. There's another, the other part that is kind of interesting about what we've done on that currency is that we basically said that we put a demarrage, like essentially kind of a negative interest there. And that goes into a pool that is redistributed out to users based on K-cycle centrality, which is a really interesting number. Basically, it basically says how central is this node in the network to the flow of currency in the network, right? So if you pulled it out, how much of the network would drop out? It's a little bit of a proof of work in a way, and it's very hard to fake it. And we also have nodes in these networks that we have KYC for. So we actually do know some of those nodes. So if you want to do a Sybil attack in order to get a larger basic income, it'd be quite hard. So this basic, quote unquote, basic income, I won't really, it's not, I don't think it's terribly comparable to what you guys have done, but it's another interesting concept that doesn't require full identity, because we are kind of doing a proof of work. So there's a basic income. As long as you're part of the network, you get a basic level. And then we scale that basic level like 5 tiers based on your K-cycle centrality in the network. And so in a way, it's kind of supporting social services is the way we kind of describe it, right? Like those are the nodes of the network that essentially enable throughput, right? So those are the schools in the communities, that's, the bakery and that sort of thing. So there is a bit of scaling this basic income up.
And there, you got a lot going on over there, Will. And I love that you mentioned K-cycle centrality. And if someone wants to know more about that, they should check out the last video that Tio, who I think works with you in some extent, he talked deeply about that. But I want to at least ask one question from YouTube that sounded really interesting before we have to go, as we went very long on this call. The question, I'm not sure exactly who asked it, but is the Web of Trust model used by Donator somehow usable for grassroots economics and Serafu in terms of scaling the onboarding process? Do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, I can answer. I think the very interesting part of this talk, of these 3 talks we had, is the difference in philosophy of how you have a decentralized, how you obtain a decentralized identity, and there is different strategy, and you will reach different results with different strategy. It's good to experiment different strategy. We experimented the Web of Trust, but I just realized today that the one that presented Alain for me is very can be very, very effective. The other part is so there is 2 parts, that the decentralized identity and the monetary policy of each project. And on that, I would say that I've been doing conferences about this topic since 2 years now. And what I can say, if you want to have people interested in your system and coming and gathering around an idea to build a new economic community, it's really important to be accurate and to be able to explain easily your concepts. So, for example, I will ask Alain to have a deeper conversation together later, because I think we are very close to each other in term of ideas. But we have to clarify things about the monetary policy. And in my perspective, I think that for us, the core of the system is at first a mathematical theory, and we can explain it more accurately and more easily, because we have things that are embedded in just three equations that are kind of easy to understand. But
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, the simplicity of it is always really nice. These systems get very complex, and in the end, whatever community is using them, the most important part is that they believe in them, right? So whether it's a crypto UBI that's not backed by any kind of reserve, or if it's a reserve-backed currency, the people have to trust the value of this money that we create, or that they create, ideally. And that's the real magic of it. I wish I had more time to go into all these things with you guys. I hope that we'll have you guys all on again, because these were all very interesting projects that probably each deserved a full hour of talking. So, but here we are. And so thank you guys for spending your time with us, and we'll do this again in 2 weeks. Thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.